Russia has purportedly launched the largest assault since their campaign in Avdiivka last year. But Ukraine seems to have stopped it cold. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about what's going on in the front lines. So this is sort of the biggest story here, is that purportedly, at least according to some Ukrainian sources on the ground, Russia launched its first battalion-sized mechanized assault since Moscow started its push for Avdiivka in October 2023. Now, what makes this interesting, you guys may recall that if you look back around 2023, you might remember that in October, right, late October, there was this huge Russian push in Avdiivka to try to take it. And it didn't actually work, right? Despite a huge number of Russian forces being committed to this assault to complete the encirclement of Avdiivka, they failed. And part of the reason was the robust Ukrainian defenses that sort of encircled the city, but also some forewarning purportedly by U.S. intelligence that saw Russia preparing a large number of tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. And of course, Russian tactics, right? Just these frontal assaults that Russia seems to favor so much. And not that there's better tactics, the only better tactics are frankly the ones that Russia uses now, which is tiny incremental progress by very small units. But this assault really was an abject failure by Russian forces. Didn't really move the needle on Avdiivka, gave Ukraine time to bring in additional forces and to dig in its defenses. And Russia was forced to pivot to a much more incremental, slice-by-slice type of progress in the town. And this meant that Russia largely abandoned these big mechanized assaults. And the thinking, even I was prone to it. I said, oh, Russia's finally learning some lessons, that they're finally figuring out that they cannot burn these huge waves and waves of armored forces, that they're just as more of a liability than anything else. But no, they apparently haven't learned that. And according to at least some of these sources, a battalion-sized assault, that's about 32 tanks and about 15, I think, armored vehicles. We'll get the exact info here in a minute, pushed near the town of Tonenke. And we could see that, again, Tonenke is along this Avdiivka axis, right? Ukrainian forces withdrew basically to this riverside here, and they have been largely using this river and canal system that runs kind of northeast to southwest as a natural barrier, a natural obstacle that's forcing Russian forces to kind of run up against it, but they can't seem to get past it. But there's still a lot of fighting. You can see here that it's most vulnerable in and around this Tonenke region. Right. So I think you're seeing Russian forces really, they want to try to cross this river because the idea is that if they can push across it, they can roll the Ukrainian forces that are holding this high ground. But easier said than done. And so it makes sense that if Russia's going to commit a large assault force anywhere in the front, it's going to be at this one point where they feel they're most able to achieve a meaningful battlefield breakthrough. The only problem is, of course, that the Ukrainians have really invested a lot in strengthening this line, in addition to having very favorable terrain and favorable observation, right? If you're sitting on a hill, you can look out across these open fields and nothing's going to surprise you. But the favorable terrain it reflects that Ukraine has really committed to some of these defenses in this area, right? And we've heard this in public statements from generals, including Syrskyi, and even at Zelensky's level, who said that, Ukraine's looking hard about where they're choosing to defend, and not every piece of territory is going to be defended equally hard. And that's just good. That's just good military logic, right? You can see, where would you rather fight? Would you rather be on top of a hill with a big river and canal system between you and the enemy, or would you rather do it like here, holding an empty field in the middle of nowhere with Russians to your north, south, and east, right? It's a no-brainer, and it's a no-brainer if you are Ukrainian commanders as well. So But let's talk a little bit more in greater detail. But before I do, I wanted to mention that if you're looking to achieve a decisive breakthrough in your day, you don't need to put together a failed armored assault. Instead, you just need a little bit of a boost. This is Strike Gum. Strike Gum, 90 milligrams of caffeine in every single piece with 100 milligrams of alpha GPC for further cognitive clarity, right? Each one of these pieces, as much caffeine as a Red Bull or an Amp Energy, but zero sugar, so it won't screw up your diet or your macros, right? I believe it. I believe some of you guys are still on your New Year's diet, right? Even though it's April 1st. So you want to check it out at strikegum.com or on Amazon. Just punch in Strike Gum. But if you purchase on strikegum.com, we've got a bunch of discounts for you, right? You can get a veterans discount. You can get a military discount. I guess they're the same thing. And of course, a new user or a new customer discount. So check it out. But a huge thank you to everybody that's left us those 5-star reviews on our Amazon store. It makes a huge difference. You guys know Amazon, if you don't have reviews, even if you have, a lot of products have good reviews and I've ordered them and I've been like, who reviewed this? So if you don't have good reviews, you're just not competing. So thank you to all you guys. Now let's talk a little bit more about details about this assault. So the thinking is that right now it sounds like it encompassed about 36 tanks and 12 BMPs. These are infantry fighting vehicles, which is a ton. And you can kind of see how tough a fight this would be for Russia, given that they basically have to get 36 tanks, around 50 total vehicles. And it looks like they have basically 2 routes to do it in. They've got this route, they might try to establish a bridgehead, and they have this route here, they might try to establish a bridgehead. But that's it, right? So you've got 25 vehicles rolling, plus you could see there's really they're very limited in what they can do in terms of where they can go in this area. So I think that definitely sort of set them up for failure. Especially when you're talking about this large number of armored forces trapped in a very small number of available routes. And geolocated imagery from yesterday shows that a lot of these were destroyed or damaged right along a road northwest of Tonenke. So again, likely along probably, my guess would be northwest of Tonenke. Yeah, it's going to be these 2 roadways here. So again, real sign that this is part of this Russian effort to sort of roll the Ukrainian flank in. They think it was likely the Russian 90th Tank Division, which is a fairly capable division, though I don't know. Russian forces have been so attrited that it's tough to know who's actually manning some of these divisions. But I think it's a sign that Russia may be ramping up its offensive actions going into the summer, right? Most open sources, ISW, even Ukrainians themselves, have said Russia's likely to launch a summer offensive. And so for Ukraine, right, they may be looking to trying to figure out, okay, what sort of tactical choices will Russia make? And this is what sometimes might be called a shaping operation, in order to create battlefield conditions that will be favorable or used later. And I think that's what this probably was, right? Again, the condition being Russian forces passing through this canal here, this canal low ground, in order to establish a bridgehead on the far side of the river that they can then exploit to roll Ukrainian forces off of this area. Again, but Ukrainian forces stopping it pretty decisively. And that is pretty much, actually, there's one other story. It sounds increasingly like the House Speaker is committed to a Ukraine aid bill coming forward here now that we're through Easter. But his speakership may be in jeopardy due to hardline Republicans who really are committed to not seeing additional Ukraine aid pass. So the speaker is actually going to depend on Democrats to step up and let him keep his job in exchange for making this aid bill happen. So it might be an actual victory for moderates from both sides of the aisle, which means, of course, as always, guys, if you are considering you want to write to your representative, tell them that you want them to back the Ukraine aid bill, even if it means making sure Speaker Johnson keeps his job. I think that's worth it, right? Reward, even though you may have one opinion or another about this party or that party. I think governing If you show up and you pass you do the legitimate hard work of governing, right? Supporting our allies, passing necessary legislation, parties, sane people on both sides of the aisle should be willing to come together and say, listen, we can cooperate on this issue, right? It's not a referendum or an endorsement of every single thing this person's ever said. So anyway, write your congressman, let them know. That's all I got. Thank you so much to our Colonel tier members, our Lieutenant tier members, and all the members on combatvetnews.com. I really couldn't do this without you guys. I appreciate you so much. See you in the next one. Cheers.